Welcome to the wonderful world of archaeology, where we will be studying the origins of social inequality. This presentation will explore the data gathered and the interpretations used to determine the origins of social inequality. In our research, we found two primary interpretations of the data gathered to explain the origins of social inequality. The first being a transition to a more sedentary lifestyle. This change in lifestyle led to an increase in population density, which then led to a relative decrease in per capita resource availability, which therefore decreased the ease of subsistence. The decreased resource availability led to an expansion of production, creating various jobs and with it a societal scale. And with this scale and these new jobs comes social tensions, both internal and external. This was a direct result of having to expand the area in which resources were gathered and expanding the workforce. Some research indicates that sedentary lifestyle may not be integral to the origin of social inequality and that population growth was the key factor.
Most archaeological methods to recover data were field techniques, such as excavation. Stratification is a widely used method for gathering data. Various comparative analysis techniques were used to help base interpretations.
The data gathered consisted of mostly excavated materials. The contents of burial grounds identified the social hierarchy of the community based on the quality and quantity of artifacts excavated. Housing layout, placement, and foundation design determined social class. The structures remaining today are generally thought to be once owned by the economic elite. Contents of these houses help determine what structures were used for. For example, structures with a lot of debitage could have been used for stone tool production. More sherds of pottery or ceramics in a house was a sign of wealth since they could afford more supplies. Ceremonial structures often depicted images or representations of a common belief or of a specific respected individual. Remains of that individual or other revered individuals may be buried in ceremonial structures.
During excavation, instances of body modification were also found. Some examples of this were the binding of feet and the skull elongation in children. These modified features are often considered desirable by the culture that created them. These body modifications demonstrate the existence of a higher social class for several reasons. First, the body modifications may have been physically limiting. This would have prevented the individual from performing normal jobs that the average person would do in society. Since the body modifications may have been physically limiting, it's safe to assume that the individual may have needed caretaking as well. This further demonstrates that the individual would have been in a higher social class, as they would have had more resources readily available to help take care of somebody unable to acquire the resources themselves.
Exotic artifacts found in sites can indicate greater wealth and a higher social class. Exotic artifacts must be obtained through trade or gathered from distant locations. Different styles of pottery can also indicate social classes because of the style and color.
Archaeologists use many different approaches to interpret the data they gathered to discover the origins of social inequality. One method they used is making interpretations based off modern trends and experiences of the archaeologist. This may include obvious examples like an individual with a larger house probably has a higher economic status than somebody with a smaller house. Past life experiences, bias, and other knowledge may also influence interpretation of the data gathered. This could include the lifestyle of the descendants of the people that are being studied, as well as previous knowledge of the area, like trade or animals found. and the availability of raw materials.
Artifacts from separate excavation sites can indicate inequality because social classes are likely to be grouped together in their geographical locations. For example, some artifacts that were considered to be more valuable may only be found in one site, indicating a wealthy tribe or village. Separation of these valuable artifacts will help determine geographical factors that apply to wealth, such as natural stone deposits used for tools or natural exotic food sources.
Building usage and classification for each building is determined by the contents excavated in each structure. For example, pipes were used for ceremonial purposes and were therefore kept in ceremonial structures. Buildings with hearths or fireplaces would have been used for living and cooking, specifically in cold climates.
To summarize, most of the interpretation is done with excavated materials. Once excavated and categorized, these materials are compared between other similar sites to help determine social class. This inter-site comparison also helps determine if certain sites held a higher social class than other sites. In conclusion, social inequality begins to develop with population expansion. The evidence of asymmetrical social relations is found in many archaeological sites across the world. As early societies became less mobile and more stationary, we see population growth and the need for more resources. In small areas, resource availability will decrease in this situation, causing the people to expand the area in which they obtain resources. The needs of the people create various jobs, which in turn creates a social scale, which is where we see the origin of social inequality. So you can see with the expansion of society, asymmetrical social relations are being created. The creation of these relations is evident in the new jobs created by the expansion of society. Some of these jobs include agriculture, warfare, storage, building, tool creation, and possibly trade. The social value of these jobs is where we see the relations being maintained. An example would be successful warriors returning from war, being greeted as heroes. They are held in a higher regard because of the social value of their job. We also see the destruction of some of these social relations. An example would be overthrowing a king or a tribal leader. As this person was once held in a high regard and no longer is, we see the destruction of that social relationship. So you can see that with population growth comes the development of asymmetrical social relations. It is the process of creation, maintenance, and destruction which keeps social inequality alive.